Do you like listening to podcasts? Of course you do. You're listening to a podcast right now. What about getting paid to listen to podcasts? Well, now you can. Sign up at podcoin.com and get paid to listen to your favorite podcasts. It's free. Get paid to listen, save up your Podcoins, cash them in for prizes like Amazon or Starbucks gift cards, or you can donate to charity like we do. Use our offer code SUPERPOD to get 300 Podcoins on us. It's available in the App Store and on Android. It's the only way that we listen to podcasts now, and it could change the way that you listen to podcasts. Now on with the show.
This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Scary stuff.
Scary people.
Scary stuff, scary people. They weren't scary.
No, they weren't.
Not scary at all. Very pleasant, actually. Very cool people.
Very opinionated.
But we like that.
Yes.
Welcome to a special bonus episode of the Super Media Bros podcast. I'm Midnight Agent Raw.
And I'm Okame.
You know what we got to do this week?
More interviews.
That's right. We got to sit down with Tony Wash and Ben Lewandowski, the directors of the badass horror anthology, Skeletons in the Closet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you haven't heard about this movie, you've heard about it now, so fucking go watch it.
Before you go any further.
Yeah, because you're going to want to hear like the insight with some context, because this movie is really a love letter to like Tales from the Crypt and like creep show horror movies from the 80s, like, really 80s. It's a very we talked about it in the interview with the guys. It's very
it's a heavily aesthetic visual treat, basically.
Yeah, it's a giant nostalgia trip to the fucking 80s and early 90s, if you give it that much of a stretch.
Just the tail end of it.
The tail end. No, I fucking personally enjoyed this movie, and I know you did too.
Mm-hmm.
We also talk a little bit about their other films, The Rake, and It's My Party, I'll Die If I Want To. So,
and many more.
Yeah, they have a lot to say that we shouldn't even be fucking saying. We should just let them say it for themselves.
Let them speak.
Shall we let them speak?
Go for it.
Okay, let's do that. I'm Midnight Agent Raw.
And I'm Okame.
And we're sitting here with Tony Wash and Ben Lewandowski from the film Skeletons in the Closet and The Rake, amongst many other really cool projects. How you guys doing today?
Good.
Okay. I was like, well, we lost him.
They had to think about it first. Like, do I feel good today?
Do I feel good? Do I feel decent? Do I feel okay?
No, Ben and I do a lot of podcasts, and it's like we always kind of, you try and figure out which guy's going to talk first, because it's not like we're in the same room together and you see one of us leaning forward to the microphone,
Like,
hi. Use your imagination. It's like, who's going to do it? I am.
Use the force, damn it.
We work together for so long, we should have fucking telepathy at this point.
You would think.
I think so, right?
Or we just be like, okay, now you first, Tony. Now you just point.
Shit. But yeah, you guys are fucking excellent like filmmakers, man. We really enjoyed Skeletons in the Closet and The Rake both. How did you guys get into filmmaking in general, and like what were some of your influences to the horror genre?
Go ahead, Ben.
You want me to take that first? Man, I don't know. It seems like still long ago. Tony and I initially weren't really filmmakers. I think we both were med school dropouts. Interestingly.
He's right.
And I went to film school to become an academic. I was going to be a film school professor. And then I found out very quickly that you can side hustle a lot of money editing, and that's how I became a filmmaker. Which is not the most inspiring story when you think about it, but when I get asked to go to film schools now, they ask me, like, what kind of recommendations? I'm like, well, learn a skill that you can use to make money right away. So either become an editor or become a union truck driver. Those are the guys that make bank.
Yeah.
Oh, I believe it. And it's funny you mentioned that too, because at one point, I know in high school, like me and my friends, we always had a camera going, so we would always be like, it didn't matter what it was. It could be like 2 or 3 minute, like stupid, like comedy shorts, but we were always filming something. And I remember looking around going, there's no film school around where I'm at that would actually be, this is like, this is like 2003, 2004. And I remembered being fascinated, like, with like, oh, it'd be cool to direct shit. But I was also like, I got really into editing. Like, I loved the idea of being able to tell the story in that fashion when you have all this footage to pick from and then you get to piece it together.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's
Yeah.
I feel like that was where my heart was drawn to, as far as if I were to ever get into doing something like that.
Well,
Yeah,
Ben,
it's got its ups and downs. I certainly wouldn't recommend it for somebody going right into film school, because it's far more difficult than I think that people think it is. But once again, it is a skill set you can turn around and utilize to make money in this business fairly quickly. Where there's a lot of other, if you're a writer, or Tony will attest to this, if you're a director, you have to you gotta hustle up your own project. But if you're an editor, and if you're skilled, work comes to you, and you can cut pretty much anything. Believe me, I cut pretty much everything.
And Tony, if I'm not mistaken, you went to Tom Savini's school, correct?
yeah, I did. I had wanted to be a filmmaker long before that. Ever since I was a kid, I always, really enjoyed the movie going experience. And I used to watch, I remember sitting dozens of times and watching the Star Wars kind of behind the scenes making of, New Hope and the original trilogy. Then just seeing all the miniature work and how they would do the explosions and stuff with the X-Wings crashing into the Death Star. And it all just fascinated me so much. And as I got, into my my junior high age and, high school, I really started focusing on the horror genre specifically, and just always really enjoyed the job of sitting and watching a movie. And so I thought, well, if I enjoy the experience of watching one as much as I do, I'd probably enjoy participating and creating one as well. And so I went to a regular college first. I was going to go to Columbia, which is actually Ben's alma mater. And it's in Chicago, and it's a pretty well-known film school. Like Spielberg's go-to cinematographer Janusz Kaminski went there and stuff. So they've got quite the well-known alumni at this. What's up?
Pedigree.
Yeah. So the school's got a definite pedigree, and so I wanted to go there, but my father, being a more traditional person, he's a retired dentist, and it's like he said, well, why don't you just go to a regular college first, and if you want, after a year, you can always transfer once you get your general education classes out of the way. And when you're 17, you don't really think about how you can actually traverse the craziness that is a college education. You don't think, oh, well, I could do this, and then I could do this, and I could do this, and it's not really laid out for you as clean cut as you may think. And so I went to my freshman year at a small liberal arts college, and I ended up enjoying it so much that despite not having focused and specialized classes in filmmaking, I just said, well, I'll do communications and art, and I'll do a bunch of independent studies and kind of try and get the filmmaking there. On top of, yes, as Ben said, I was initially a pre-med major, but that was only my freshman year. And then after that, after a couple of years of being in the real world and working basically a cubicle job that I despised, and working at a restaurant as a server for a while, I said, this is stupid. Like, I need to go back to school, focus on filmmaking. So I went to Savini School, and always, being an art major and always enjoying art and special effects particularly, I kind of went into that area and started learning practical effects work, which was great. But I'm not nearly as talented as some of the people that I went to school with, and some of the people that we work with nowadays, like our friend Jason Kane, who is, phenomenal at his skill set. And so I just kind of said, well, I don't think I'll ever be able to be a professional special effects artist, and there's really no money in it unless you become a union high-end special effects artist. So I just kind of said, you know what, I still want to make a movie. And we were only taking still photos of all of our makeup work in class, and I thought, well, if we're making makeups for movies, why aren't we shooting video of our makeups to see how they move and interact with the actor, portraying this character that's all made up. And that's how we ultimately got my first feature, It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want To, going, which I shot while I was finishing up school in Pittsburgh.
Did you work on Ben with that, or was this like, did you guys meet up after that film?
No, Ben and I met in 2012, like February of 2012, because Ben was putting together an anthology film called Chop Shop, which was originally consisting of 4 different film directors, or 5 originally. And when we actually started production, it was 4 different film directors, all using the same cinematographer, Robert Patrick Stern. And we were all to shoot a 20 to 25 minute short film to create an anthology film, Chop Shop. And Ben had been influenced from movies like VHS that had just come out.
Those are great movies, by the way, too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he wanted to do
Tony and I had never actually been introduced. I cold called him. Actually, I cold emailed him and just said, "Hey, I don't know you from Adam." That's right. I knew Tony from one of the actors we know. He was working on Tony's Chance in Hell, and then I heard about him. And randomly in spring of 2012, I think February, I sent him a Facebook message and said, "Hey, I'm putting an anthology together. Are you interested?" And Tony, to his credit, he didn't know me from Adam, but he said, "Yeah, let's do it." And amazingly, all of the guys I contacted were like, "Yeah, let's do this." That's how that whole project started right there. Just a random couple of emails.
Just taking the chance.
And as you guys have seen, Chop Shop ended up becoming the movie that the Widow and Charlie are watching on their show, Skeletons in the Closet. And that's a result of, Ben and I had been working with these 2 other filmmakers, as we said. And once everybody shot their short film for Chop Shop, we kind of constructed this wraparound story, which is the first person point of view of the guy going through purgatory, being tortured and stuff. And the group as a whole wasn't really interested in pursuing that avenue. There was a little bit of disagreeing in terms of creative differences with, altering each other's short films so that they would all work with the wraparound story. And so we ultimately, after, I don't know, it was probably 2014, I think, is when we finally disbanded Chop Shop. And so it was after, or maybe 2015 even. And so Ben and I had just been working together, and at that point had been very good friends. And so we just said, well, why don't we, figure out a way to tie these 2 together, whether it's, putting them on a DVD and selling them for $5 a piece at conventions, or trying to come up with some other wraparound content. It wasn't until late 2016 that I pitched Ben Skeletons in the Closet as the wraparound content, and it just kind of went from there. So the project's been being created over the course of 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say because when you said 2012, whenever y'all pitched Chop Shop, like I immediately knew. I was like, holy shit, that's like 6-7 years ago. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
But definitely a labor of love from both of you guys.
Yeah, stuck with it for a long time, and you know what? Give props to everybody else who did too, because they all thought we were crazy, or we were just never gonna complete it. But Kelly and I knew that our movies were linked, literally. Like, they couldn't exist without each other, so we knew we had to wait. and there's no market for long form short films. I mean, you could put out a 30-minute movie, but who cares? I mean, you're not gonna make any money with it.
And I had learned that with A Chance in Hell. In 2010, the movie that Ben had mentioned, that a mutual actor we've worked with named Tony Lee Gratz, he had worked on a film with Ben called Ashley, and had worked on A Chance in Hell briefly, and that was a 35-minute short film, a World War II Nazi zombie movie that very much so Overlord is very similar to. And, it was meant to be kind of a calling card, and it was meant to be a proof of concept for a feature-length version of A Chance in Hell, which, as I said, ultimately became Overlord without my consent. But, it's ultimately Ben's right. There was no marketability of the short film by itself. And, I've got it on Vimeo on demand, and I have it on, it's probably on a couple foreign markets that I got paid for, through BidSlate, which was actually a really good distribution deal. But other than that, it's just this 35-minute short film that won a handful of awards and never really went anywhere. So having that being the previous experience that I'd had, and Ben's just knowledge of the independent market as well, we both just kind of said, well, we don't want to just, release these two shorts by themselves. And because film festivals at the time didn't really like long form, short form content, like 30-minute short films was not a thing. It was like, make a 10-minute short, or make a 2-minute short, or make an 80-minute feature or a 90-minute feature. And that was really the gamut. And, so we knew that we didn't want to stop and just leave these two projects kind of sitting out there and not really do anything with them. We owed it to our cast and crew. And then we also had the short film Meisner, which is directed by Rian Owen, about the girl tied to the chair in the basement, which is also played by Rian Owen. So we had all these short films, that we wanted to do something with, and didn't want to just, release them by themselves. So it ended up working out in the long run.
Yeah, it definitely worked out. This is something, like we said before, we really enjoyed these. Well, this and the Rake, but like the Skeletons in Closet was very much, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it was very much a love letter to stuff like Tales from the Crypt,
like Elvira. And
yeah,
stuff like
Elvira, Creep Show, things like that. Very reminiscent of stuff like that, and especially with the nostalgia factor kicked into high gear, because a lot of the nostalgia was like kind of happening for like the 80s and 90s a few years ago, and especially when something like Stranger Things had come out. I liked the aesthetic of the house that the A Killer's in the House like wraparound piece was being shot as, because I saw the TV that Jamie, the little girl, was watching, and I was like, shit, I had that same fucking TV.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it brought me right back. I had that exact same model TV.
Yeah, we got that from an old lady who had passed away. Her daughter was obviously selling a lot of her stuff, and we had found it on Craigslist, and I think it was $40. And it had the glass top, the piece of glass with the felt, circles on it that sat on top of it with doilies. And I didn't take the doilies because I could care less about those. But yeah. And the cool thing is that I'm a very nostalgic person, and Ben and I over the years had spent a lot of time hanging out and watching movies together while we were editing these movies. While he was editing and I was, watching him and helping him, give him suggestions while he was editing. We would kind of have these, meetups where we would spend a few days together. That house that we shot A Killer's in the House in was actually my roommate Jim Peterson's house.
Wow.
So I lived in that house.
Oh,
And
no shit. That's cool.
and we shot The Muck there as well. The girl tied to the chair in the basement is that basement of that house. And so it's like we had this awesome location, which is kind of how it fed into Skeletons in the Closet being made in the first place, because we had access to an 80s style location. But it was really fun. Before and after we shot the movie, we actually kept the family room set dressed like that for a while, and I actually at one point had a movie watching party and had everybody over. There was probably, what, Ben, like maybe 6 of us that were sitting there watching old, DVDs, because I didn't have a VCR that worked, but watching DVDs on that old TV, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
I enjoyed the acting in it too. I know that's something you like too, Cody.
I was immediately in love with Charlie. Like, he was so comical, like just how droll and like Al Bundy-ish she was to Widow the entire film. I was just laughing my ass off every time he made a quip to her about something she said.
Dude, that was very much like Peg and Al Bundy. Like, no bullshit. That was great.
Thank you. Yeah, our co-writer John Blusick did a really good job with that, and he had written A Chance in Hell with me, and he and I developed a feature-length version of the script for the movie The Muck, the short film that's at the beginning of Skeletons in the Closet. And Johnny is just very sarcastic and very quick-witted, and his sense of humor was perfect for this Peg and Al Bundy dynamic that I wanted the Widow and Charlie to have. And that comedy counterbalances, that really well with what Ben did with the Channel 13 narrator, which is the other comedic element in the movie, So it worked out well.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite parts too, was just during the beginning. I forget what film it was. It was like, well, that was fucked up.
Yeah, Channel 13. Fuck yeah. That was just beautiful. Like, because it's not something you would expect it, in a sense, to something like, given the context of the movie and everything, and it's self-aware, and then you see the TV station come on, and you just, Ben, was that you doing the voiceover work on that?
Yeah, I'm on television. What's funny is, Tony loves to tell the story too. What's funny is I laid down the audio for the television. I'll get back to the origin of that in a second. It's also pretty funny. But I laid down the audio for it, and it was supposed to be temp. And I said to Tony when we were still in editing, I said, you know what? Let's turn this over to one of the composers, D.T. McCullough, who is extremely funny and has a wide range of voice. And Tony, once again, he was crazy. He's like, no, it's funny. Leave it. But I almost got replaced.
Shit was hilarious.
Yeah, I think sometimes Ben, as most people I think don't realize, Ben is one of those people who doesn't look at himself and say, well, I'm a funny person. And I think that, being an outsider, not being Ben, you listen to his narration and it's like, well, first of all, there was never meant to be a narration in the script. It's just Channel 13 and that's all it is. And then during Ben's editing process, he incorporated the narration to kind of help lead the story along and fill the gaps at some points. And it was such a great idea, to his credit. And again, this is one of those things where we look at all the times that we've collaborated together over the last 7 years, and there's been so much wonderful cohesion and ideas that are created because either we came up with something together or the ideas would bounce off of one another and just create some really great stuff. And so that was a really wonderful surprise. When he said after that, he's like, oh yeah, we're going to get DC to do this. Don't worry. It's all temp. And I was like, well, fuck no, it's not temp. This is great. Like, it's so dry and it's so weird. And, some people have said, like, we don't really get it. Like, why is the TV swearing? And it's like you said, we're self-aware of the fact that this is a very tongue-in-cheek nod to the 80s, and it's meant to be hokey,
Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty part of it. And I wish more people saw that.
Or more aware
of
it,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we clearly weren't taking the material particularly seriously. And that stems back to what Tony was saying about Johnny. He pretty much kept the tone there with how campy the movie is.
Yeah, and it wasn't shitty campy either. It was like a very well balanced bit of it, because kind of getting into the first real story in the movie, the Grandma O'Malley's Pantry, that was a really good balance because, man, Lee Ross or Lee
Rose.
Lee Rose,
Yeah.
dude, she was so good. She made me genuinely want to reach through the TV and be
punch her
like,
ass.
yeah, dude, like she did that character so much fucking justice.
We don't condone hitting grandmothers, but Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
she's good in that movie. She's fantastic.
Yeah, we got very lucky. It's a funny story. So Grandma O'Malley's Pantry is the short film that I created for Chop Shop back when Ben had reached out to me in 2012 and said, "Do you have anything?" And I was like, "Yes." I mean, I had written Grandma O'Malley's Pantry probably 5 years prior to that, and had the idea in my head even 10 years before that. And I think that was an idea I had in college. And so for him to come to me and say, here's this idea, what do you think? And I'm like, well, I've got the perfect film that would work for this. And Grandma O'Malley's really had nothing to do with the other three filmmakers' movies. Ben's was The Dismantler, which is the two thieves in the junkyard, Reservoir Dogs, style. And so it's like, and then the other two films were also very different thematically. And so even though there was not a lot of similarities, I just knew this was a perfect opportunity to make this film, which Grandma O'Malley's was my favorite script that I'd ever written of anything I'd done. And so I was really excited about it. And we were going to actually have a younger actress, this girl named Liz, who was originally going to be a part of this project called The Storm that I was working on. I was trying to get a feature-length roller derby alien horror movie together.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it would be a lot of fun if we could get the money to make it one day. Imagine a roller derby team fighting off aliens. Like, it would be so much fun.
Oh, fucking please. Like, you could have the fucking derby track be like the top part of the UFO ship itself. Like, that would be so fucking cool.
Well, again, we would need quite a bit of money to get that one off the ground. So anyways, we had one of the actresses I cast for The Storm. Her name was Liz. And I had talked to her about playing the grandma. And Jason Kane, our effects artist, was going to do an old age makeup on her. And the test old age makeup was phenomenal. I mean, it looked really, really great. And clearly aged this, girl in her late 20s to easily 50 to 60 years old. But at one point, Kelly Tidmore, who was an associate producer on the project, I think, and was helping with some of the stuff, was like, hey, I've got a friend who I think would be great for this. And she showed me her headshot, and I was like, oh my God, this lady looks great. And she's got some, legitimate credits and stuff. Like, she was the grandma in an Olive Garden commercial that had the little girl from Modern Family in it.
Oh,
so it's like
she's also in Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yes.
Really?
No shit.
Yeah. She's Pamela Drake in Grand Theft Auto 5. She says, you know what? My son would know this. She's got a recurring line that's really funny. You can hear Grandma in it. Every time hold on for a second. I'll look this up. Give me 1 second.
All right, cool.
I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, you're good. That's funny.
Yeah, Ben's son found it at one point playing the game, and it's like so spot on, Grandma O'Malley, that I almost got a tear in my eye because she has since passed away, I think 2 years ago now.
Oh, shit.
And just such a wonderful woman to work with, such a motivating character to be involved in a production with, and ultimately, like after that movie, she was such a strong supporter of just like me as an artist, and we would meet for lunch a couple times, and she would just give me so many wonderful tidbits of advice of working in the industry, and just very motivating and a lot of confidence boosting. So just a really wonderful, genuinely wonderful person that I know a lot of people miss a lot. And the great thing too was that in the flashback, when you see a young Grandma O'Malley, that's actually her daughter, Candace, who is an actress who's been on Days of Our Lives and has been in a number of different films over the years. And so it's like when we cast Lee as the grandma, I was like, okay, so now we need to find an actress who can play her as, you know, a younger version of herself. And she's like, oh, well, my daughter's an actress. And she shows me a picture, and I was like, holy shit, this is perfect.
That's fucking
So,
amazing.
yeah.
I felt like I just saw the More You Know star shoot across our fucking heads just now.
Yeah, really.
Fuck, that's
the whole
amazing.
point of podcast, right?
That's why we have the WoW button.
That's it.
The more you know.
Yeah. Holy shit. But yeah, that's one of our favorite segments in the entire film. And there was something I noticed in the basement scene when she goes downstairs when like spoilers, obviously, we're not going to spoil everything, but grandma is doing something to a certain character. Daughter goes downstairs. I loved the color palette. It really like jumped out at me, like Dario Argento in Suspiria, like how he used certain colors to like light specific scenes, and it was one color for one shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's what you were going for, but that is the vibe I got from it. It was really well done. I mean, the whole thing was well done, but that was fucking amazing. I loved it.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
sorry.
I mean, Rob Stern, our cinematographer, and his whole team, you know, Brian Daly, who's now a gaffer on God, everything being shot in Chicago, and Francis Claudio, and, you know, these guys are, you know, because at the time, that's who really the camera crew was those three guys, camera and lighting, and, you know, Chris Parker, who was our sound guy at times, was also helping them. But even Jim Peterson at this point, who is one of our go-to crew members and associate producers, he was art department on Grandma O'Malley's Pantry, which is so funny to think back to. But it's like, you know, these three guys just really did such a phenomenal job. And, you know, again, not to discount the other two, but to just give Rob so much credit for not only knowing his camera like the back of his hand, and how to stretch the boundaries with the creativity that he can do with it, but the lighting as well. It's like he is so good at taking an idea, you know, and I'm sure Ben can attest to it with Dismantler, which is obviously a starkly contrasted looking movie to Grandma O'Malley's. Rob is so good at saying, okay, well, what do you want? Like, what are you going for? And I said, Creep Show, Fright Night, Amazing Stories, you know, think about all those films that we grew up watching as a kid, and that's what I want Grandma O'Malley's to look like. And I gave him a lot of those reference points to check out, especially Creep Show. And that's really how we kind of generated that look. You know, as much as I wanted the basement to have this natural looking eeriness, very similar to like the stairwell that she's coming down to get to the basement initially. Mm-hmm. You know, very natural looking, which were actually the attic stairs in that house. But the basement itself, I just almost wanted it to be otherworldly. And Ben can kind of attest to this. I had really wanted initially, but production budget hindered and time hindered the ability to do this. I wanted a lot of the movie to come from, obviously, the little girl Casey's perspective. And so I wanted there to be a lot of moments in the film where you were seeing things through her eyes, and her imagination was very, very vast. And so things like the scene where she's washing her hands in the bathroom and there's that butterfly wallpaper.
Yeah.
I wanted the butterfly's wings to be flapping. So it's almost like this girl,
wow.
Her imagination is running so vividly and so wild that you as the audience don't know if she's making all this up, because she's got like, you know, these you know, this disorder of her crumbling home life and her estranged grandmother treating her like shit, you know. So it's like, is it all mental or is it real? And so that's why a lot of it is kind of a little more to the fantastical end of things. But unfortunately, we weren't able to explore her imagination as much as I would have liked us to initially.
Sounds like it could have been like Courage the Cowardly Dog almost. The way he would just imagine all these people around him being these like monstrous looking entities, even though they're probably normal people. That's what it kind of reminded me of a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, you mentioned the lighting part earlier. The whole scene where they're getting ready for bed and they're talking about how like mean Grandma O'Malley was, and then the next shot was her in the next room over the hallway, listening in with that dark green light flashing on her. I was just like creeped out and uncomfortable for a second. I was like, normally filmmakers that make like a stark contrast of regular lighting to make it seem kind of ominous, but y'all just put like, okay, dark ominous green light. Grandma O'Malley's like this obvious like, you know, evil looking character, but it's so unsettling almost just watching her like stare at the freaking wall, listening in like, what the fuck are they doing, you know?
Yeah, you guys went for it on that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Again, that's it. All it is a product of my upbringing. You know, I grew up in the 80s watching Friday Night, Creep Show, all the Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, Ghost Story, you know, even like I said, the Amazing Stories movies, like those or shows, and then Tales from the Crypt and everything, and all those movies, all that content is really what inspired Grandma O'Malley's Pantry and the look of that. And same thing with Skeletons in the Closet. The entire set piece for The Widow and Charlie's basement was very much so inspired by the stuff that we all grew up watching, you know?
Yeah. Let's move on to the Meisner and the Dismantler sections of it, because you guys briefly spoke about Meisner was shot by the same woman in the chair and everything. How did that actually get figured into what you guys were working on? Because I definitely want to talk about the Dismantler, which I believe is Ben's work, like you said, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did Meisner come about getting fished into all this?
So we wanted to. I was dating that actress Rian at the time, and we had just submitted the muck to the ABCs of Death 2 festival or contest, and when ABCs of Death 2 did not select the muck as a winner, as one of the finalists, we had Jim Peterson again was also a producer on a short film called Mother that had been submitted to the festival or to the contest. And we had a handful of other friends. My friend Brian Wolford had done one for Mushrooms. And we had a handful, and Ben had done one called Run Run Rutabaga. It was actually it was called Mutation, right, Ben?
It was called Mutation, and we changed it. That wasn't really a
He changed it to Run Radiation, and we've been making fun of it.
So I can't explain.
So we had all these filmmaking friends who were making shorts for the contest, and when none of us won, Jim and I basically said, well, why don't we create our own, you know, anthology of films, you know, and call it M is for Midwest or something. And so that's originally how our web series World of Death, which runs through bloodydisgusting.com, came to be. And so originally it was going to be all these M short films, and Rian really wanted to direct something because she had only been an actress at that point. And so I basically for Christmas, my present to her was, we're going to shoot a short film, and, you know, I'm going to produce it. And the idea for Meisner was an idea that I'd had since college about a girl tied to a chair in a basement who wakes up and is being videotaped by a camera in front of her and realizes that she is the next victim of a serial killer in her area. And then at the end of it, you come to realize that her hands are not actually tied behind her back and that she's just auditioning for a role in a movie. And so she really liked the idea and started talking to Robert Patrick Stern and Sarah Sharp, who is the production designer on a lot of our films. And, you know, they kind of became co-producers on this, and they started generating this whole idea of making it a 1960s film and period piece, and, you know, adding all these different elements to it. And then really the crowning achievement was handing it over to Ben and having Ben work his editing magic on it, because Ben is just such a artistic editor that, you know, it's one thing to have someone edit something chronologically or give it that very linear, stale, you know, we're just telling the story type of edit. And it's another thing to give somebody like Ben something and have him just create an entirely different viewpoint of the movie. And that's what he did with Meisner. And so it turned into a really interesting little segment in the film that, you know, when we originally went to World of Death and left the M is for Midwest concept behind, we thought, well, we'll just include Meisner in that. And Meisner kind of sat on the back burner while we were working on the Rake and while we were promoting and marketing World of Death. And then we were doing pickups for High on the Hog and finishing editing High on the Hog. And then it was like, and then we jumped to Skeletons in the Closet. And so at that point, Meisner had just been sitting on a shelf, and Rob was the one who suggested that we include it because Rian plays kind of that half, that severed torso that's in the camper in the wraparound segment of Chop Shop. And so he said, well, why? And she's got that TV sitting next to her with the static. And he said, why don't we incorporate her character into this whole world where everybody's clearly going through hell, you know, and this is everybody's purgatory, so to speak. And it was a great idea, and it gave us another 6 minutes worth of content to add to our runtime. And that's what happened, you know?
Nice.
Definitely like that a lot. It's a good idea too, like especially having everybody, you know, like meld everything together, ties up really well.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Dismantler, Ben, how did you go about coming up with this idea? Because I noticed it was very, or both of us noticed actually, it was very like what, Grindhouse almost, like very gritty Grindhouse, and it, like y'all said before, like Reservoir Dogs. Because one of the things I noticed was very Tarantino-ish in a sense as well. Is that kind of the influence, or was there something else that I hadn't picked up on, or neither of us picked up on?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Dismantler is kind of the bastard son of the Skeleton Closet experiment, because it's the one movie that clearly has a different aesthetic, because it was never, ever, ever intended to be 80s period. Dismantler is supposed to look like it's supposed to, for the most part, look like a timeless Grindhouse action. If you watch it very, very carefully, I have a lot of nods to all 5 Dirty Harry movies. They're hidden with the movie. And there's a couple other tropes in there to other action films, like Vanishing Point. So what I told Rob to do is I said, look, this is what I want to do. I want this to look, I want to bleach it out. Make it. I don't want it to look black and white. I want to get as close to black and white as possible with a little bit of color palette. And then I said the other thing I wanted to do is, Paul Greengrass is really popular at the time. So I was like, let's speed this up and make this look. We'll make it look old, but we'll cut it like a condensed or a new age action film, like for example, Bourne film, which is why the editing is so fast. But yeah, it's definitely the movie inside of the collection that feels, not tonally. I mean, tonally it's still a horror movie. But you could easily make the argument that that's not necessarily true period.
Right.
Yeah, but it was still a nice change of pace, like to go from the Grandma O'Malley thing to this. As far as like, you know, going over Meisner and then coming to this, it was like, holy shit, like you don't expect it, and it's curveballs like that Cody and I absolutely just go fucking nuts over in a movie, because
it's a completely different movie than Tony's. There's no doubt. It's completely different from the other material. That's the one nice thing I like about Skeletons is you've got 6 very, very, very different films.
Well, it's funny because it's like Ben and I have always kind of been fans of each other's films, and I always had told him that of the 4 in Chop Shop, and I really enjoyed this one filmmaker, John Wesley Norton, did a short film. I forgot the title of it off the top of my head. Ben, do you remember it?
With them.
Yeah, and it was just such an emotional and dramatic horror film that it was great. And Frank Ziegler was the actor in it. Rest in peace, Frank. He did such an amazing job portraying the main character in that. But Ben's movie was always my favorite of the 4 because not only was he able to take such a minimal idea and a minimal location and a minimal number of actors and create such an intriguing story with it, but there are some moments in Dismantler that I felt were legitimately creepy, and the set pieces that he constructed, you know, and like when it got to the nighttime and it's like the temperature has legitimately dropped to where you can now see their breath because he had shot part of it in the summer and part of it in the winter time. And, you know, the dialogue between Steve and Tony, and the story that Steve is telling, I always thought it was such a tremendous short film, and it keeps going the whole time. What?
Steve's so good in that. He's such a creepy asshole. So good in that movie.
The rat.
Yeah.
And he is. And that's what I cast him. I was like, look, I need a creepy asshole. And then Nelson, who helped work on portions of the script with me, he's like, oh, you need a creepy asshole? Let me call Steve with that. Sure enough, he showed up to my house. Perfect casting.
I'm perfect for the role.
I'm a perfect asshole.
Wait, Steve's been to your house?
Yeah.
Man,
Steve is
I've known Ben for 7 years. I've never been over to his house.
Now it comes out.
Now we're gonna have a different kind of podcast now.
Hey, you know what? Neither are my parents.
Oh shit!
Oh,
Oh damn!
so only Steve is worthy of his house,
Right.
But no, I think it's like it's such a credit to the script, in my opinion, that you can have two guys sitting in 7 or 8 different spots throughout this junkyard, and they're basically just sitting and talking, and Steve is telling the story of the dismantler and why the junkyard's haunted by the dismantler. And I just think it's so eerie, and he does such a good job of building atmosphere out of essentially nothing but a night in a junkyard. And
yeah, there's really nothing. The production design was basically what we could find. The only piece of production design that was actually built for Dismantler was done by me and John Pata, director of Pity. And that's the sequence when Tony walks towards Steve down the tunnel of tires. We built that literally like hours before shooting.
Holy shit!
Otherwise, we just roamed about the yard and just found shit and shot in it. There was a sequence we had to cut in an old abandoned limo that had a giant bag. We didn't even want to know what was inside a bag. It honestly, it looked like there could have been a body in there, but it was probably like an old carpet or something. But we were going to shoot it, and everyone's like, no, we're not going that fucking no.
Like, holy shit! What if there would have been like, oh fuck, like
just roll with it. Keep going. Improv.
Damn. Oh my god.
You know what? In that junkyard, there's a portion in the script early on when they're in the Christine car, the 57 Chevy. Actually, that wasn't a 57 Chevy. That was a 54, whatever the fuck it was.
Packard.
When he's telling the story to Tony Lee about the bodies being all the old monsters being buried in the junkyard, that actually comes from a story that I put together while interviewing other junkyards for this movie. Because I went to Jan's Junkyard in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and I asked one of the guys, and he said, no, we're not going to let you shoot it. And I said, why? You got bodies buried here? And this motherfucker, he shot me a look, and the look said 2 things. Yes, we do, and get the fuck out of here. That made it into the script, and that's how I basically wrote that. Tony, I don't know if I ever told you this. I don't think I had that script ready when I first contacted you, right? I think I had an idea, but I don't think it was written. I think I basically winged that in the month between March and June when we first started shooting that. Yeah, I think I put that together kind of on the fly.
And it's so funny because it's like you look back on that and where I'm at now in terms of experience with production and stuff. If someone would have told me, well, I'm just going to kind of wing it, I would have said, yeah, I'm not going to be a part of this production. But like, but 7 years ago, in the beginning parts of 2012, it's like, you know, Ben had done, I think, 2 features at that point, or was working on his second feature with Ashley, and had done a movie called Dove prior to that. And I had done It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want To, and then I did the short film A Chance in Hell. And like, that's all that both of us had done. And so, you know, this was just like this awesome opportunity to say, well, we don't have to spend, you know, thousands and thousands or even more on making a feature ourselves. We can spend, you know, $500 in some cases, or a couple thousand in another case, to make a short film and be a part of a feature. Let's just do it. Let's just fucking do it, and hopefully it works out. And
wow, you're shortchanging yourself, because you actually had an organized. I mean, you actually had an AD. Fuck, man, you had craft service. We had shit. I think but here's the thing that's staggering about not just Skeletons as a whole, but Tony's movie and my movie. I think combined, those 2 films, which are easily almost 55 minutes of content.
Yeah.
I don't even think those combined cost $5,000. In fact, I'm positive they didn't.
No. Because you said yours was like 500 and mine was like 3,500.
Yeah. I think when you got down to it, in the 18 months it took us to shoot Dismancer, I think I spent no more than about $1,200 in 18 months. That's it. That was a phenomenally. I mean, we're never going to have that, but no doubt about it.
No.
But yeah, that's a miracle.
But again, what that was finding a group of really, really talented people who had a lot of you know, gusto and desire to do something creative, no matter how much work and effort was involved in creating it. If it wasn't for Rob and Brian and Kiko and Jim Peterson, you know, all these guys, they are legitimately the ones that helped make these things look as good as they are. If it wasn't for them, Ben and I would have been shooting on, as Ben says, a potato, and our movies would look like shit. You know, those guys are the ones who really made what we created as professional and as good looking as they are. They deserve the credit there.
Well, definitely fucking hats off to those guys.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to ask about Skeletons before we moved on to the Rake?
I was thoroughly surprised by one aspect. When I watch most films, nowadays I can easily predict like the direction is going to go way before the plot point thickens, basically. And I was surprised like how well y'all took so many different styles of films, combined them together in this one turnaround story. And I still, at the end, was like generally surprised like how it came to be. Especially when, what was it, Tony at the end? The bandana, or they call him Tank Top, basically. He was, you know, tied in almost every way possible. And I was like, oh wait, I was like, oh my God, that's the daughter. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh shit! Like
a lot of people don't catch that. Yeah, Skeletons, you really have to pay attention, and it does require more than one viewing. Absolutely.
Right, but at the end,
sorry, I appreciate that you guys. No, I apologize. I appreciate that you guys paid attention and understand every little tidbit about what the movie's about, and the fact that like earlier you were actually mentioning the titles of each of the short films. Nobody knows that Jamie and the Babysitter's short film is called A Killer's in the House. Mm-hmm. So it was really sure you guys pull all of those titles out and refer to each of the shorts by their title to help classify them, you know?
Well, if you look at the credits rolling it
had all the VHSs. Yeah.
You guys had each movie title as its own VHS slip on the side of the fucking TV.
Which
and I was
like
like,
great touch to it.
That is so fucking cool.
Yeah, that's
Verdino.
Yeah, that's Steve Verdino right there. That was a fucking genius move on top of many genius moves.
But the thing I was like kind of guessing was going to happen was Widow and Charlie were actually was it Jamie? Yeah, I thought they were her parents.
They were coming at the house. Yeah.
They were coming from the basement, and that's why she killed Tina. And And I was like, that would make sense. But then I was like, no, that didn't happen. Then I saw the patient from the hospital was coming. I was like, well, why did she kill her?
And I was like, well, maybe because she was, and I guess I kind of, as far as just a personal, like, relation in a way, is like, if I was her, I'd be sitting there and I would look back and I would be like, bitch, why are you fucking with my mood right now? Like, let me enjoy my shit. Just shut the fuck up. She won't quit talking through the shit. She won't quit making fun of her for watching these fucking movies. It's like, you know what? I got something for you, ass. Here you go. So I get it. But it's still fucked up in its awesome own way.
You talking about that look she shoots her when she turns around slowly?
Fuck yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite single shots in the whole movie. Because, yeah, her eyes just scream, shut the fuck up.
Bruh, those two had such great chemistry together, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
ultimately,
they're fantastic together.
Yeah. You can't mess with the widow's #1 fan. That's the moral of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. God, it was fucking awesome.
Honestly, that's one of the best. That's one of the best parts of the movie. That very, very few people, except for you. Well, you guys have, but very few critics have really hit on is how good the casting is and the chemistry between everybody in every movie. I mean, you know, the grandma and her granddaughter and her own daughter, and then you get the stupid assholes in the junkyard, those two buffoons, you know, and then everybody. Hell, even one at the camera has good chemistry. He's just staring at the camera.
Yeah.
Also, we mentioned earlier before we even got on here that we want a vinyl copy of the soundtrack.
Yeah, that. Oh God.
Wait.
Dude, look, the fucking the ending song over the credits, there was a specific band, and I don't know if either of you have ever heard of them before, and I know it wasn't them, but it reminded me of this Finnish band called the 69 Eyes, and that's the vibe I got, because it had that fucking goth rock and roll feel to it, but was so set in the 80s. It was so fucking great.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I haven't heard the name 69 Eyes in about a decade.
They're still around.
No, that was my buddy Vic and his friend Tim who made that, and I wanted a song that sounded like it was from Rat, you know, because I was a big fan of Rat and a lot of the hair metal from the 80s, and thought that was perfect. So
yeah, and I mean, like, it totally nails that vibe. I think it was more or less just the music aspect of it too, like the guitar, because the 69 Eyes, before they were even kind of a more goth based, they did like glam rock in their earlier career, and that's the kind of shit I was thinking of too, was that aspect. I was like, holy shit. And I was like, we both were like, we have to have this fucking soundtrack, because we are huge into music. Like, music is just as important as movies are to us.
Definitely.
Oh, it's its own character. Some movies are saved by the soundtrack. Like, I'll give you a great example. Can you imagine Halloween 3 without the soundtrack?
Fuck no.
You have Tom Atkins' mustache and a bunch of really silly practical stuff.
Could you imagine Halloween? I'm sorry. I was like, could you imagine Halloween 3 without the fucking Silver Shamrock jingle?
2 more days till Halloween.
Oh shit. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well,
Could you imagine the original? I've seen this on YouTube. Somebody put this up years ago. It's been removed since. But somebody had Halloween, the original film, with the isolated score removed. So basically what you were hearing was just atmospheric, foley, and dialogue. The score had been removed completely. And let me tell you something. Not even close to an effective horror movie. But that's how powerful. That's how important.
Mm-hmm.
Not even close, Ben?
Man, not even close. Speaking of shitty scores, let's talk about Rake now.
Awesome. So, look, we saw that, and I think both of us, the big takeaway from, because we both are like hardcore into creepypasta stories, like especially Cody.
Oh, definitely.
And one aspect we took away from it was, or at least I took away from it, was it had like Carpenter vibes to it, to me, because of like the the kind of slow burn dread build like to the climax of the film, and then there's some body horror element in there, and then there's some elements of like The Thing. Just I loved how you guys did it, because Ben, you cut the movie, right?
Oh, here we go. I'll let get back on this. Some things you can't say and whatever. I was the original editor. What you guys are seeing, I'll make this real fast so Tony can give you the longer explanation. What you guys are seeing is not the movie I wanted. It's not the movie Tony wanted. It's not the movie that anybody on our side wanted. But if you guys like it, that's awesome. That's pretty much all I'm going to say about this movie. Because my experience was not positive. But, you know, if you guys like the movie, and a lot of people do, that makes me happy. But yeah, the movie you're seeing is quite different than what Tony wanted. And certainly what I.
Oh, that kind of makes me sad. Makes me sad.
I mean, that's
trying
part,
to be diplomatic.
that's part of the it's part of the process of being, you know, involved with a large group of people and producing a film. And, you know, sometimes you have to just accept the fact that other people's opinions are going to come into play, and other people are going to have, you know, more control over certain decision making responsibilities than even the director may. And it is what it is. You know, it's taken me a long time to get past all that, but you know, what makes me the most happy about it is that some of the elements of what the people who worked the hardest on that movie, some of their involvement is still seen. You know, really, Ben is the one person who his involvement on the film was really overshadowed by the new edit of the movie. And it's unfortunate because Ben had created a lot of really amazing pieces that, in my opinion, and people who had seen the rough cut of the film that Ben had created, you know, were genuinely terrified of the movie. I mean, I have not seen people react to a horror film the way some people reacted to the original pieces of the Rake, but they were very cutting edge and really not stuff that was quote unquote mainstream, whether I agree with mainstream or not. And so stuff was changed, and it's unfortunate because that, you know, I wish that Ben's work could be showcased more in the final version of the movie, but everybody else who put, you know, so much work and effort into that film, the entire art department, again, being led by Sarah Sharp and Gina Flamio, who was the art director, and the entire camera and lighting team led by Rob Stern and Brian Daly as the gaffer. You know, Jason Kane and his entire special effects team just did such an amazing job that, like, the story may not make as much sense as my co-writer Jeremy Silva and I had wanted it to make sense of, because a lot was left on the cutting room floor. You know, I think there's 15 minutes that's not in the movie that was left out. That was a lot of character development and a lot of atmosphere building. And, you know, ultimately that's not there. But I think that a bystander, somebody who's coming into the movie with zero understanding of where the movie was originally and where it turned out when it was released, you know, guys like you don't understand what's not there, so you construct the story off of what is there. And hopefully you still see that all I was trying to do was create The Shining meets Alien, you know, mixed with the John Carpenter as I possibly can.
Yeah, that's because I was going to say the Carpenter aspect definitely fucking shows up big time. And I can see, like, the Shining bit of it and the Alien portion of it. Mm-hmm. What about you? Cody, did you have anything, like, on the film that kind of stuck out to you?
The very beginning with Dr. Warren, I think it was his name, when he was listening to the recordings of, I can't think of his name now, the patient. Whenever he was listening to the recordings and had that backdrop shot where he was in his chair and you saw the cigarette smoke flinging in the light and stuff, I wanted to, like, just screenshot that scene right there, because that was probably my favorite shot of the whole entire movie, because the way it was just angled, the lighting and the contrast of everything. And it kind of gave a good idea of like, okay, this is what this film is going to be kind of leaning towards, some kind of psychological thing going on. Not so much as a monster per se, but more of like the mind itself and the deep recesses of it. Now,
well, and that's what The Rake is. At the core, The Rake is a psychological thriller sandwiched inside a monster movie. And, you know, a lot of people don't even realize there's a monster in it until the end of the film.
right.
And part of that is due to the edit of the movie. The original script, you know, the opening of the film is actually what I'm, as a filmmaker, most disappointed with. And a lot of people enjoy it, so I'm glad that audiences like it. And that's credit to, you know, the people who helped construct the opening of the film. But my opening originally was a lot more dark and didn't even take place at Christmas time. That was only because we were shooting in December, so we thought, well, let's make it, you know, kind of open with the holiday. But there's a moment at the end of the opening of the movie after Jacob Murphy, you know, slits his throat and you know, kind of in front of the kids. Yeah, how's that for a spoiler? Now people are going to want to see the movie. They're like, wait a minute. A dude slits his throat in front of a couple of kids? That's fucked up.
Yeah.
Channel
13, like, that was fucked up.
Right?
The Rake. Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. But what I originally wanted to do with the opening is that after Jacob Murphy slits his throat and the kids are sitting there staring at his dead body and just like in shock and awe, you start to hear the monster birthing itself out of him. And so it's like, you don't know what's happening, but you can hear that something's happening, and you see the children's reactions. And then in those flashbacks that are peppered into the movie when Ben is sleeping as an adult and when Ashley is sleeping as an adult, those are kind of what helps start telling the story about the fact that there is actually a monster, so that when you see the monster at the end of the movie, you're not like, wait a minute, so there really is a monster. Here I thought all along that Ashley was the killer, or that Andrew was the killer, because I was working so hard to create all these red herrings throughout the film. You know, but again, it's a product of what the entire team, which consisted of, you know, the writers, myself and Jeremy Silva, and the people who produced it, and ultimately the people who worked on post-production, and you know, which I was not really a big part of. And so the movie still is out there, and it was released by Sony, and I'm very proud of that, you know. And so there's a lot of people out there who like it, and so I'm glad that it's finally seeing its day on out there for audiences, because I mean, we shot that in 2015, so it took 3 years to come out.
Yeah. Side note though, speaking of Andrew, y'all made me hate that motherfucker so much. Like, y'all designed that guy to be such a dick.
You guys are not the only one.
Like, I love when...
And you know what's ultimately ironic about this? That is not the way. It's not the way Tony and Jeremy wrote that character.
Mm-hmm.
He was supposed to have an arc very similar to Jack Torrance in the novel. And Kubrick, interestingly enough, did the same thing to the source material that the producers of The Rake, the producers in LA, did to that character. He starts out at asshole 11. He doesn't go from 3 and adjust accordingly. He starts off at 11 and just never retreats. And
he's the Spinal Tap of assholes. Then. Yep.
It's too bad. You know what? Silva and Tony did a really good job of building an arc to that character. He really did. He goes crazy. In our cut of the film, he gradually goes crazy. And in their version, he's just an unlikable asshole immediately. And as you can tell, this movie makes me really fucking angry. Tony's being exceptionally diplomatic right here. I'll give him a lot of credit. I'll just shut the fuck up now.
Well, the thing about this film, like, I was going to kind of withhold how I felt about it. Now, like I said, I liked the film as it was, you know, good job. Nonetheless, there are some things about it that I don't like. The vibe of, it's another, like you said, Tony, it's like a mainstream horror film. And I think watching The Skeleton in the Closet and what you two guys have done independently and together, y'all could have, like you said, y'all could have made this film a lot better than what was presented to the audience. Especially with now that you're telling us, oh, well, there was a different cut of the film that we had a better vision of that was not put onto screen. I want to see that cut of it now because I want to be able to be wowed a little bit more than what this film gave me, basically.
Yeah. Does that even exist, or do you guys have like your own personal well, put this in the fucking vault of like
the Warsh vault,
like my own personal trophy collection?
Yeah, I mean, Ben had the most recent version. Ben had done like a 3.5 is I think the most polished version of the edit that Ben had created, and it didn't even include the opening footage because we didn't shoot the opening 15 minutes of the movie until December of 2015, and Ben and I were working on the edit. Pretty much I think starting like July until like September, October of 2015. So it's just not polished, and there's no benefit other than for personal satisfaction to finish that edit, because we could never release it based on our distribution agreements, and ultimately I'm not rolling in money, so I'm not going to spend $20,000 to professionally polish the edit and do color correction and sound design and hire a composer. And so, you just have to you have to just set it to the side and say, this is another stepping stone in a career. And luckily Ben got paid a nice amount of money to work on the movie. It wasn't, it wasn't union rates by any means, but Ben got paid a lot more money than I got paid, and my co-producers got paid, and a lot of people got paid to edit it. So even if no one will ever be able to see Ben's cut, publicly, at the very least Ben was paid for his efforts. And he and I, what that did, if nothing else, was that generated a relationship between Ben and I in the editing room and as collaborators artistically, because after that is when we edited when he edited High on the Hog, and I helped, as the director of High on the Hog, helped him, with ideas for the edit, and we collaborated on that, including the pickup shots for Hog and Skeletons in the Closet. And so if it wasn't for the experience of working together on the Rake, not only would our friendship have not grown the way that it did because of all the time we spent together working on the Rake. Like I said, he would come down to Jim's and to the house that Jim, Rob Stern, and myself lived in, and Ben would spend a week away from his wife and his son and hang out at the house and edit the movie in what we called the Princess Suite, which was one of the spare bedrooms that was still decorated from how it looked when Jim's sister lived there as a kid. And so we called it the Princess Suite. And, so those times, as much as it sucks that everything went down the way that it did, those times really created our collaborative relationship and our friendship at that point in a lot of ways. But it is unfortunate because Andrew's character suffers because you start in our version and in the script, you see Andrew as a loving husband who dotes upon his wife and who wants to do everything he can to take care of her because she's pregnant with his child. And you learn all this in the first 2 minutes that you're involved with Andrew and Nicole. And then what the final edit did was it removed all of those scenes between them as husband and wife and him being tender and gentle with her and loving and complimentary of her, because the new edit of the film hides the fact that she's pregnant until the dinner scene when she reveals it. And I understand the desire for taking the story in that route and creating this large scale reveal to the audience. But ultimately the problem there is that you are not allowing the audience to grow with the story, because the story is no longer growing. The story is being kept hidden in the shadows. And so all this atmosphere that I worked so diligently to build, and, all these characters that I worked so hard, and that Jeremy, my co-writer, who did majority of the character development in the script, all this dialogue and characterization that he built, and all the relationships between all these people who are clearly having struggles within their own lives, all of that was taken away because we wanted to, because the final edit was meant to be quicker and was meant to be, more like we said, mainstream and Hollywood, if you want to put a title to it. And it's unfortunate because you lose a lot of the tension, you lose a lot of the character development and a lot of the concern that the audience would have for the characters and the degradation, because the whole point is that the Rake is a pestilence. The Rake infects one person and then everybody around them gets infected by its evil. And so not only do the plants in the house die, not only does the fruit in the kitchen rot, but all of the mental stability of the characters within the film also rot and degrade. And you don't see a lot of that in the edit of the movie. And it's unfortunate because the movie's 79 minutes long. You could have certainly kept the other 10 minutes in there. And it's not like the audience is going to sit there and say, well, fuck this. This movie's 2.5 hours long. I'm not watching this.
Yeah.
But again, it got out there and it showcases a lot of really amazingly talented people's hard work. And I'm very, very thankful for that. And it is available in majority of the VOD avenues out there. You can rent it on cable and stuff. So I'm not going to complain. I just wish that movie to me would have been the calling card for all of us at the film festival circuit. I think that movie would have killed at South by Southwest, Fantastic Fest, Fantasia, Toronto After Dark. That's the kind of movie that I look at a lot of these independent horror films that are coming out these days, and there's a lot of really awesome talent out there and a lot of really visceral content. But the Rake would have fit in perfectly. And at the time, if you look at 2015 and then the following 3 years between when we shot the Rake and when the Rake was released in June of 2018, how many different creature films came out that were very, very similar to the Rake, that if we would have been able to just power through that and get it released in a timely fashion, even late 2016, it would have killed. And it would have been the first of its kind. Previous to that, the only creature movies were like It Follows, which didn't even have a monster in it. Mm-hmm. So it's unfortunate that it missed the mark in a lot of respects. And so,
Yeah, that is unfortunate.
Well, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the industry, and that's how it is. And, all it did was teach us to do better and, fight for things more on future projects and stuff. So I'm not going to chalk it up as a bad experience overall because, I'm being diplomatic about it. But, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, because it yielded different rewards for everybody versus the initial reward that y'all wanted from it.
Yeah, for sure.
Learning experience, basically, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ben, were you about to say something?
What was that?
I thought I cut you off.
Oh, no, not at all.
I was gonna say if you guys want to get into High on the Hog and just kind of briefly discuss that, because we haven't gotten a chance to see it yet. Is it even out? Has it been released yet, or is it still kind of in the?
Yeah,
are you guys still touring it? Or?
In fact, I can send you guys a link if you guys want to do a follow up. Because trust me when I say this. You need to see the movie.
Dude, look, I saw who was in it, and I was sitting here going, holy shit, I have to see it, first of all, because Sid Haig, and it's fucking Sid Haig. And Cody and I actually, kind of the basis of one of a series that we do within our podcast where we, put two cult films against each other came from us watching Samurai Cop a few years ago, and whenever I saw that you guys had Robert Zadar in there, I was like, holy shit. I know he passed away in 2015, so I assume this movie was shot, before that, obviously, but, yeah, I saw those two names, and I was like, I have to fucking see this movie.
Definitely.
Fucking Samurai Cop.
We fucking love that movie, dude. It's
Yeah, me too. I could talk about that movie for days.
Dude, we actually interviewed Matt last year.
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, did you really? Oh, I'm jealous.
Yeah,
wow.
he's fucking cool, man. He's a fucking cool dude.
Yeah, I bet you need to be if you make a movie like that. You better be cool.
Have you seen the second one?
I have actually. It doesn't have the same. It's a fun watch, but it doesn't have the same horrible charm as the first one.
Yeah,
agreed.
Yeah, we're hoping, like, because he's talked about wanting to do a third one, so we're hoping that happens, like, done, how he's kind of had it feel.
That movie's lightning in a bottle. There's no way that every stage of the filmmaking process can be as incompetent as that movie. It's, like, if that was could you imagine the level of genius, like the Andy Kaufman-esque genius, if that really was intentional?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I'm telling you, it can't be, though. I mean, it could be, but it couldn't be, because Amir Shervan, the director, did like 4 or 5 other movies here in America, and dude, I mean, none of them hold and I say this like because it's true, none of them really hold a candle to Samurai Cop in terms of like the so bad it's good aspect. But fuck, dude, those movies had some shit in them as well that made you go, what the fuck? And Robert was in 2 of those as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was. Bobby had a colorful career of, God, I don't even know if they qualify as B movies. Z movies, maybe some of them.
Dude, man, like Maniac Cop and shit like that. My family owned a video store whenever I was a kid, so like I grew up around all this shit, man. I grew up in the VHS era days, so like seeing him on movie covers and shit was like, I remember that guy. So it was just cool to see, like, holy shit, fucking Sid and Robert in this movie. I want to fucking see it. And if it's anything to do with like stoner comedy and shit like that, I will absolutely 110% give it a fucking chance.
Yeah, it's definitely that.
So what's it about?
You want to take this, Tony?
Sure. So, High on the Hog is about Big Daddy, who's played by Sid Haig. He has a farm that's been in his family for 5 generations, which is really cool. When we were shooting, when we were editing it, rather, my mother had a bunch of old, Super 8 or 8 millimeter footage of her, of my grandpa's family on the farm in Kentucky. So we incorporated that into the edit. And Sid Haig had a bunch of his own photos of being a child and stuff that he gave to Ben, and Ben incorporated those into the edit as well. So it's a cool movie because it's got a lot of personal touches to it.
Oh, wow.
And so Sid plays Big Daddy, who's got this farm, and in order to make ends meet, he starts growing marijuana on the farm. And he, kind of like Charles Manson, but not in an evil manner, he takes a lot of runaways in. He's got a couple of girls and a guy or 2 that live with him that are kind of helping around the farm. But, they're not evil and crazy. They're just helping him, and they're all living a very hippie kind of lifestyle on this farm. And, it's ultimately family, which is really great. And the government starts to want to infiltrate them because somebody is, unbeknownst to Big Daddy and his family, somebody is poisoning their weed. It's spiking it, and people are smoking the tainted drug and going crazy and either killing themselves or, running in front of cars and stuff like that. And so the drug agent, which is played magnificently by Joe Estevez.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, so Joe Estevez does a great job of playing Agent Dick, and he basically starts to go after Big Daddy and take him down. And so it's grindhouse, it's crime, it's drama, it's comedy, it's definitely stoner humor and very trippy. Ben's edit is absolutely batshit off the walls, crazy. So, but it's a lot of fun, and at the core, the movie's about heart and about family and about integrity and about doing, fighting for what you believe in.
Fucking A. Now I'm excited. I was excited to see it before, and now I'm even more excited to fucking see it. And then you said Estevez, and I was sitting there thinking, wait. And not to go back to Samurai Cop, but he was the fucking police chief in the second one. And I was like, oh my God, that's where I heard that fucking name. And that dude is a pleasure.
Yeah, they worked together on some really... they made a lot of questionable decisions together. Let's put it that way.
And that's what happened is when they were putting the production together back in 2012, Bob Farster, who owned the farm that we shot on, had worked on a movie called The Rockville Slayer with Joe Estevez and Robert Zadar. And Robert Zadar lived in Dubuque, Iowa, which is just over the river, the Mississippi, from where we were shooting, which is Galena and Elizabeth and Savannah, Illinois. That's on the far west side of the state. And so when Bob started, discussing using his farm and stuff for the movie, he's like, well, I've got connections to Robert Zadar, who was a Maniac Cop and, Tango and Cash and stuff. And he's like, and he's friends with Joe Estevez, and we should get them in the movie. And so, they ended up signing on to do these bit parts in the film. And I'll tell you, working with Robert Zadar before he passed away was a definite treat and one of the highlights of my career. Because, he for a long time was in a lot of really crazy, stupid movies, but the man was such a genuinely wonderful person, and he was so enthusiastic and grateful to be a part of the production, and was easy to work with and just a blast. And so, I mean, everybody was, that movie set is still, it goes down as the best experience of making a film ever, was being on set in 2012 shooting High on the Hog. But after the first week of it, of course, the first week was a clusterfuck that I can get into, but I don't know if I need to get into it. So, but yeah, the last 3.5 weeks of shooting that movie were the best experience of my life in terms of making a film. So, it was nice to be able to work with him before he passed away.
That's awesome.
Yeah, dude, because I've seen Robert in, like you said, he was in a lot of fucking, like, really good movies, really crazy fucking movies, really dumb fucking movies, but I loved watching him because he always was the most consummate professional in whatever fucking movie he was in. Mm-hmm. Like, you bought into whatever character that man played, you fucking bought into it 100%. So, yeah. Love Robert. Trying to look here. Was there any other projects you guys have in the pipeline that you're working on that you can elaborate on, or is High on the Hog kind of like your latest venture?
I don't know. I am, but I don't know if I can talk. Yeah, I guess I can. I'm working on an utterly batshit Bollywood movie.
Oh, wow.
I'm already interested.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, that was kind of out of left field. Yeah. Like, okay, yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, Bollywood movies, realistically, they're just grindhouse movies.
Yeah,
that's
dude.
That's all they are.
Yeah, I didn't expect it. Like, I was like, oh shit, that's fucking awesome.
That's the one benefit of being an editor. I mean, you'd be surprised what comes across my desk. I can't even. I've got children in this house. I can't even talk about some of the shit I've worked on. But once again, for all these young filmmakers, if I was pressed and I'd say, what should I do if I want to go into filmmaking? I'd say, be a union driver or go into film editing. Just like Tony said earlier, just be aware of the cautionary tale that he ran you through, because that does happen to everybody, and it'll probably happen again, just on the businesses. But yeah, so that's what I'm working on.
Hell yeah.
And the end credits song is going to have 50 Bollywood actors dancing in unison to a song written by the same people that did the Skeletons in the Closet theme song.
Yes.
Oh my god, that was awesome.
I wouldn't expect anything less.
Exactly. Be just fucking amazing. What about you, Tony?
Now you got me studying Bob Zadar's. Jesus Christ, did he make a
dude? Yeah. Rob has a fucking like if you took all the movies he did and you had to write them out, it would be one of those long fucking like scrolls. You just take the top and drop the bottom and kick it, and it just fucking goes for like 20 miles and shit. That man was in a lot of movies.
God, I mean, this is a podcast and it's stuff. Here, I'm looking for one particular 97. Here it is. Future War, where he plays Cyborg Master. Oh my God, man. This honestly should be a class in film school. When I get older, I think this is what I'm going to do. I think I'm just going to go back into teaching. and I'm just going to teach bizarro classes like, for example, the films of Robert. Seriously, everyone would take this class.
I was about to say, we should do a whole podcast episode just on his collection.
Oh, we probably could do a whole fucking podcast on Robert Zadaro's movies.
Oh, God, easily.
As well you should.
Yeah,
that could be a whole week.
We have we've already got our episodes planned out through Christmas this year, and we have enough because we do a Cult Cinema Showdown bi-weekly thing, and just those episodes that we have shit for, we have episodes for the next 5 years, so it's it's unfucking real. But
well, you guys owe it to yourself. I will send you. I think you and I talked about this last week. I will send you the screener, because trust me, when you see this movie, you're going to want to talk. It would be fun if Tony and myself and Kevin Lockhart together wrote it, and the producer of the movie were all on at the same time. Because then we would definitely have some fun with that. I'll send you that.
Yeah.
You're probably gonna want to follow up because that's
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm game.
If anything, it's fun.
Yeah, we'll set that up, dude. We are always game to have anybody that comes on here. We are always game to have them back on and talk about anything. I think before we got a hold of you, me and Cody and Tony were just bullshitting about video games before we even started rolling on this. So, I mean, literally anything.
Yeah, if you guys ever do a one-off, you guys ever do a one-off podcast just about 80s action movies? Give me a call.
Oh, definitely, man.
The best 80s action films of all time.
Yeah.
And if you ever want to do a segue about a subgenre of slasher films where there's aerobic scenes, then definitely call me and Tony.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely.
I picked up, I got Cobra on Blu-ray, Ben.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Did you really? Smart guy.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, yeah, you guys want to do a podcast about that movie?
Dude.
Oh, man.
You could do a podcast about Cobra. You could do a podcast about the fact that Stallone was supposed to play Axel Foley in Beverly Hills Cop, and then pretty much what he was going to do kind of became what Cobra is.
And you know what? That whole movie has a great story. Yeah, as it relates to Beverly Hills Cop, and I get asked a lot. People are like, "Do you really think that's a good movie?" And my response is, "That's totally irrelevant. What matters is the movie exists, and I enjoy it when I watch it. It doesn't matter if it's good. Most 80s action films are not good. It doesn't matter. There's no really good canon film, but that's another thing. I would do a whole class. Or a whole podcast of canon movies.
Oh, hell yeah, man.
That'd be a ball.
Yes, it would. Have you seen the, oh, damn it. Because there's
Electric Boogaloo?
Dude, that, but what we cracked up at was, we cracked up because they talked about how, they would try to beat other people to the punch with their fucking movies and shit. So, when they put Electric Boogaloo out, Menahem Golan and was it Golem and Globus? Yeah, they fucking put their own documentary out called The Go-Go Boys, and the Go-Go Boys. And you know what's
funny? It's not particularly good. It's not one thing. It's not objective at all, and it's just dull. Electric Boogaloo is, God, what a great doc, man! What a great doc. I wish. You know what's funny? Those guys should love that. There's this entire universe of people that love their movies.
Oh yeah.
But they just don't have a sense of humor about themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Because those are some of the best, over the top, horribly fucking amazing movies ever.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. From fucking The Apple to the Missing in Action films to the Death Wish films. Oh my God, the Death Wish films. Those.
The Crackdown.
Wow.
And it's about crack. So fucking genius title there.
Oh yeah, man. You guys ever do a podcast on canon? Yeah, fucking call me up, because Man, what a time to be alive. That would have been a dream job for me. 1980s editor for Canon? Fuck.
Jeez.
I'd rather have that than winning an Oscar. Seriously.
Fucking A.
That sounds stupid.
Oh my god. But yeah, Tony, do you have anything you're working on right now that hasn't been announced?
Well, I got working on developing scripts and stuff right now to try and get a bunch of things together to pitch people. That way I can try and fill my slate next year. And then we're trying to get the Skeletons in the Closet TV series under production, but it's taking a bit of a time to get that all together. So we're just kind of keeping our fingers crossed that something positive happens with it, and we go from there. So yeah, I'm also like looking at developing and becoming a producer on a project with some friends out in LA that they're looking to start getting underway here in the next month or two. So a couple of different things going on, but nothing's like concrete set in stone just yet, and no features currently, but looking to get one for 2020 if possible.
Sweet.
No Bollywood if you're smart.
Hell yeah. Well, that's awesome that you guys have more stuff coming out. And yeah, it's funny y'all mentioned that. We were going to actually talk about, like, shortly, like, if this were to be like an actual TV series, that would be so much fun. Because I feel like we're kind of missing that aspect of, like, horror on television. Yeah, like, there's some good shows. Like, you were telling me, like, what was that one? Channel Zero, Cody?
Channel Zero, yeah. It's the creepypasta with Candle Cove and stuff like that.
Yeah. Like, stuff like that was really cool. So it would be cool if you guys were able to get Skeletons in the Closet, like, as a regular on television. That would be such a fun watch. So hopefully that happens. And
well, yeah, I mean, I don't think that just perpetuating these characters would be great, but it's also the ability to tell a slightly more understandable story, like less convoluted, because you look at what we did with Skeletons in the Closet, and I appreciate sincerely the fact that people such as you two guys can watch the movie and understand exactly what we were trying to accomplish and what we were working with it. But ultimately, a lot of people's issue with the movie is that it's a little confusing because you've got 6 different short films within one movie. So the TV show would give us an opportunity to further develop our wraparound characters with the Widow and Charlie and Jamie, but also we would be showcasing one short film per episode instead of 3 or 4. So it's not going to be as confusing to the audience. And I really hope that we're given the opportunity to do that because I agree. I think this show is what a lot of horror fans want. And given an appropriate budget and the right amount of time and a cohesive script from start to finish, again, Skeletons was us piecing together 6 different short films over the course of 6 different years. So to be able to start right from the get-go and have a cohesive story that involves the 2 wraparounds and the short film, I think their audiences would be blown away by it, and I just hope we get that opportunity.
Definitely.
yeah, absolutely. We hope so too, man. I think that's all we got for you guys, man. We know the Rake and Skeletons in the Closet are out on Prime. I know I watched Skeletons on Tubi TV. Is there anywhere else or any other movies?
Hog. You can see Hog on Prime too.
Oh, you can. You said High on the Hog is on Prime too?
Yeah, Hog.
Well, you have to rent it though. That and iTunes.
It's not on. Yeah, it's not free yet.
Oh, it's all good. Yeah. Like as long as it's out there for people to rent or view, it's because we'll definitely be plugging all this in the wrap up segment we record later on this. So, are you guys on? Do you guys have any social media that you want to plug or anything like that before we head out?
Yeah.
No, he's on everything. I think we're on everything but Twitter, right? I'm not on Twitter.
I'm not on Twitter either. Ben, go ahead and tell them where you're at.
You can find me on Instagram on September Suns Films. I'm on the same on Facebook, and then I think, I'm on Facebook under my actual name too.
September Suns Films.
Yeah, September Sun Films.
Awesome.
And I've got on Instagram a company of Scotchworthy Productions. So it's Scotchworthy like a bottle of scotch and worthy like we're not worthy, all one word. I really should have thought of a better name, a more recognizable name when I came up with my company name, but that's a whole other story. On Facebook, Scotchworthy Productions has a profile, but a lot of my promoting I do through my personal profile, which is Tony Wash, like wash your hands. And I try and post every week, Monday through Friday. I try and post BTS photos from the movies and stuff. So, if people such as you guys enjoy watching our movies, definitely find us on social media because you get to see a lot of the behind-the-scenes work that went into these things. See a lot of pictures of the people who really made all these films possible. There's so much more to all of them than just Ben and I. So, that should be said for sure.
Hell yeah. Well, we really appreciate you guys taking time to come on the show and hang out with us. We had a lot of fun.
Shit, we appreciate you guys promoting our stuff and enjoying it as much as you did.
Oh, man. We definitely plan on, doing more of it as far as, soaking up the content. And we definitely want to have y'all back on to talk about High on the Hog more in detail once we've actually got to sit and, view it a few times. And we can set something up in the next month or so. Maybe do that, so.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk. We'll talk online about that.
Sounds like a plan. All right, well, we'll let you guys get out of here and enjoy your Sunday. And we really appreciate it again. Thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you very much, guys.
All right, Tony, Ben, we'll catch you guys later.
Later.
Fuck yeah.
That was so great.
Channel 13.
Man, that was fucked up.
I just love that so much. WSPI. Channel 13. Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Yes. Anyway, we're gonna put their social media handles in the show notes below, along with links to each movie where you can either watch it on Amazon, Tubi TV, or rent it, or wherever you wanted.
However you want to view it,
Yeah.
Wherever it's available.
And if you want to follow us, all that shit's down in the show notes below. You already know where to go, what to do.
But go follow them because they're just as equally, if not better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
fucking A. I'm looking forward to. Oh, God damn it! I really hope that TV series gets made.
Same.
We need something like that. Damn it.
Another continuation of Channel Zero. Kind of sets.
Yeah, a little bit. Except it would be Channel 13.
There you go. There's the title of the film or the series.
Fuck yeah.
Channel fuck yeah.
Channel fuck yeah. Any fucking way. Yeah, go scroll down and do all that shit. And be on the lookout Friday because we are going to be doing Birdemic versus Who Killed Captain Alex. God damn it. I fucking cannot wait to talk about this shit. It's going to be a blast. Literally a fucking blast.
In so many ways.
Ugandan's first action movie versus the Great Bird Attack of 2010 in Florida, not Florida, California.
The other end of the United States.
It's
the ass end.
It's late.
Yeah.
It happens. But anyway, I'm going to shut the fuck up. I'm just going to shut the fuck up now. And
well, why are you still talking?
Okay, fine.
Anyway, this is the end of the podcast. He was Richie. I am Cody. I don't have shades right now, so we don't have nothing to throw off. So bye.